Hello, I'm Daniel. I'm a meditation teacher in Kansas City, and this is my podcast, Sharpening the Mind. The teachings in this podcast are free of charge, but of course, if you feel compelled to make a donation, you can do so by clicking the link in the show notes. Hello, today the topic of my talk is the courage to open our hearts. The courage to open our hearts. And I'm going to read to you a quote from Thupten Jinpa. This is in the book A Fearless Heart. He says, "It takes courage to open our hearts to others and to expose our vulnerability." I'll read that again. It takes courage to open our hearts to others and to expose our vulnerability. We don't always think of courage as something, or we do think of courage as something brave. We don't always think of opening our hearts as something brave. I'm going to tell a story. So in 2016, I received teachings from Lama Lena on a retreat at the Rime Center. At that time, in those days, she would come visit us in Kansas City every year and give teachings. So I've actually been on retreats with her a few times. One of my favorite teachers I've retreated with is Lama Lena. At that event, she taught us something called, at this event, she called it the practice that takes the open heart as the path to awakening. The practice that takes the open heart as the path to awakening. And at that time, I really didn't want to receive that kind of teaching. I just wanted to go on a retreat with a teacher. I was still feeling inspired to try to be a Zen Buddhist then, and these kinds of practices weren't what I wanted to explore. I thought I could work on opening my mind or sharpening my mind and not worry so much about opening my heart. I didn't want to think about opening my heart. My thoughts on the subject have evolved. This is not to say, and I don't want to be construed as saying, that there is not emphasis on opening the heart in the Zen tradition. There is, but I don't want to suggest there are no heart-centered practices in the Zen tradition. But to my mind, compassion is not nearly as central as it may be in some other traditions. That's what I want to say. And it was not a thing I was interested in. But when she gave that talk, when she taught that practice, it did something for me. It sort of made me start to evolve my thinking, because that practice she taught us meant a lot to me, and the way she talked about it meant a lot to me as well. So I'm more into those kinds of teachings and practices now. But anyway, when she was giving this teaching, she said something that stuck with me and still sticks with me now. She said, "It can be hard to open our hearts because we've all been kicked in the heart in the past. This causes us to want to have closed hearts for protection." I'm gonna just say that again. It can be hard to open our hearts because we've been kicked in the heart in the past. This causes us to want to have closed hearts for protection. And when she said this was a big revelation to me. We have all been kicked in the heart. Everyone on this planet has. Everyone you interact with has been kicked in the heart. And I like that terminology a lot. We've been kicked in the heart. Most of us have been kicked in the heart many times. And you know what I mean when I say that. It's when you're betrayed. It's when you like someone that doesn't like you. It's when you lose things you love. We're all getting kicked in the heart. And I like that terminology so much that I use it in my own talks and my own writings. I use it whenever I can find a reason to use kicked in the heart. I use it. And I'm telling you all of this, because opening our hearts is brave. Opening our hearts is brave. Kindness is courage, and vulnerability is strength. Sometimes people imply that kindness is bad, that sensitivity is a weakness, that, we should just be as selfish as we can and take the things we want and not care about other people so much. But the truth is, and what I want to share with you, is that opening your heart helps others feel empowered to open theirs. Opening your heart helps others feel empowered to open theirs. In A Fearless Heart, Thupten Jinpa says, when people understand the reasons why we choose to do something, when they get the basic message that we don't want to hurt them, they tend to be more accepting of our decisions and compassionate toward us. This is human nature. And he goes on to say that we are afraid of opening our hearts and showing compassion because these fears stem from confusing compassion with submissiveness, weakness, or sentimentality. The fear to be compassionate, the fear to be kind, stems from confusing compassion with submissiveness, weakness, or sentimentality. We are afraid people could hurt us if we have open hearts, but there's more than that to it. We are taught sometimes that compassion is not cool. People have thrown around terms like bleeding heart and snowflake to describe someone with an open heart in a negative way. But an open heart's a good thing. The thing is, as I said before, opening our hearts empowers others to open theirs. And armoring our hearts, the truth is, doesn't really work. Compassion is in our nature. Closing our hearts will not make us happy. We can dare to be compassionate instead, and it is daring, and it is brave, and it is intimidating. We can try to protect ourselves against all the suffering and pain in life, but we can't do it. Not really. It's like trying to cover the world in leather instead of putting on shoes, which is a metaphor I'm paraphrasing from Shantideva. It's like trying to cover the world with leather instead of putting on shoes. We can't really cover the world with leather. We can't really do that. If we open our hearts, then our hearts can be stronger. We can develop an inner strength that maybe we don't have right now. We can become more patient, wiser, and more motivated of doing the work of helping ourselves and others. An open heart also brings connection with other people, and we should connect with others, even when we're afraid of being hurt. One thing we've learned in the last few years is that isolation can be really hard on us. Isolation coupled with uncertainty is a real problem for our happiness and well-being. Jinpa goes on to say, through training, we can make compassion our basic stance, the very outlook with which we perceive ourselves and the world around us, so that we engage with the world from that place. That's what we're trying to do here. Shift our framework, shift our mental framework so we start from a place of compassion. We start from a place of compassion. What if we can open our hearts and change our way of thinking? Kindness, compassion, and open-heartedness are virtues, and we should be cultivating these things. So open up your heart. Open up your heart and be brave. Open up your heart and be brave. I'm going to put in the notes a link to a teaching from Lama Lina that is very similar to the one I had that day that I talked about at the beginning. And thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Have a good day. Thank you for listening and have a good day.